This video idea was inspired by one of my followers, actually. I've got a list of questions for different personality types, and I'm gonna ask the normal people these questions. These are just mainly my followers. No celebrities, no well-known personality types that are on YouTube or anything like that. Just normal people. I'm gonna ask them some deep questions, life questions, relationship questions, and see how each type answers them differently. So my first one is going to be INTJ. This person actually reached out to me and we just kind of got talking and wanted to go ahead and do this. So it kind of gave me the inspiration to do this. I'll just give you a little background on INTJs first of all. So INTJs in general are seen as very strategic. They're very visionary, independent thinkers. They value competence. They're quite intellectual on the most part. They're very efficient. And they really have a lot of goals in their mind of things they want to achieve personally, and they work hard at these pursuits. They have a natural inclination for problem solving, and anything that requires critical thinking, analysis, logical thinking, that's right up their alley. Their dominant cognitive function is NI, introverted intuition. This is what enables them to see patterns between things, relationships between things that other people may miss. It helps them envision this sort of big picture for themselves and for the world. They kind of take in the information around them, filtering through this kind of cognitive function. So they don't see things as they are, they kind of see things as they could be and potential within things. So it's quite interesting. Definitely focus more on long-term goals, and they are very strategic planners, as I said before. So I've got some notes here, so I'm just going to be referring to my notes a little bit, and then I'll get into the questions, which are also on here. The second cognitive function is extroverted thinking. Now this is the function that they interact with others. So the dominant cognitive function is introverted, so this is all kind of inward within themselves. They don't necessarily share these insights with other people. But the extroverted thinking is the one that people do interact with. So people will see this readily within INTJs. The auxiliary function is basically responsible for organizing their tasks, organizing their goals, and making sure that resources are allocated appropriately, that jobs are allocated appropriately, project management, so that their goals and their tasks can be achieved. It's what's making their vision become a reality, which is what INTJs are really good at. So very efficient, problem solving. They apply rationality to these projects that they're working on. So very logical thinking here. They don't really consider how they feel or how others may feel about things. It's more about what is logical and what makes sense to them. So this is the function that they use. Now their third function is probably going to be developed more in later life, in their 30s. So it'll be interesting to see if in some of the questions, if this function is starting to develop a bit more. This person is 22. I'm going to keep it anonymous, but 22 years old, so still on the young side and hasn't necessarily developed their FI. But this is just the function that is responsible for that kind of moral compass within themselves. What are their values when it comes to things? So a 22-year-old may not be thinking in terms of what they value, but more so what is logically correct, whereas later on in life they might be incorporating those values a little bit more, which is good. It's a good thing. And then their least developed function is SE. So this is the function that is responsible for interacting with the world in terms of kind of practicality, being in the present moment, using their senses to perceive things and take in information with their senses, trust their senses. This is the function that will be least developed and will probably come out in times of stress. So INTJs definitely prefer that more abstract thinking rather than the practical sensory thinking style. Now that you have a little bit of background on INTJ, their personality, and their cognitive stack, let me get into the questions. There's about 30 questions here. I probably won't do them all in one video. I'll split it up just to break it up a little bit so it's not too long. We'll start off with the philosophical questions, which should be right up an INTJ's alley. First question being, what is the meaning of life according to you? This person says, for me, I would say it's achieving goals that I set for myself, and it tends to be the same for every INTJ. So this is very much an INTJ answer. As I said before in the beginning of the video, they're very goal-oriented, very driven, and they have almost a perfectionistic streak in them of things that they expect from themselves. They have very high expectations of themselves and of others, but especially themselves. So this kind of aligns with what I said earlier about INTJs being very driven. The meaning of life according to an INTJ is achieving their goals. Okay, very simple. How do you define success and happiness? So they responded, when everything goes on like I planned, it's a success for me. I'd be very happy if things went out that way, but unfortunately life isn't moving in that way. That's why most INTJs are depressed. We plan everything from beginning to end, and if we don't find the forecasted result, we end up in the NI-FI loop. So that is the loop that can happen when any personality type gets stuck in a loop between two functions that are of the same orientation. So either they're both introverted or both extroverted. So in INTJ's case, because their dominant cognitive function is introverted, then the tertiary function is also introverted. So they kind of skip that extroverted thinking, which is very, very important in order to kind of make well-rounded decisions and interactions and so on. If you're going through a loop where both functions are introverted, you're less likely to take advice from other people, you're less likely to see the realities of things in the world, you're less likely to take in information from outside of your head. Because both functions are introverted, you're just kind of looping around back within your mind. So going between the patterns, the connections that they're seeing within things, and then jumping straight into like, well, how does that align with their values? And it's not a well-rounded decision. So ultimately it's probably not going to be a good decision if you're stuck in that NIFI loop. It's really important to balance these cognitive functions, and the way the cognitive functions are stacked if you're in a healthy development is to have that balance between introversion and extroversion. Get out of the NIFI loop, obviously it's really important to engage that TE again, that kind of extroverting that thinking preference and organizing the people around you, organizing the tasks around you, the resources around you, interacting with them and getting that back and forth feedback in terms of what is logical, what is not, and not kind of being too stuck in your own thoughts, your own emotions. The patterns that you're seeing within yourself may not really reflect the reality of what's actually happening. Ruminating for too long, for example, this can lead to that as well, because you're just constantly in your head. So as the person said, INTJs don't like it when things don't go according to plan. It really kind of floors them and jars them and puts them off course. So it's really hard for them to get back on track sometimes when things don't go according to plan. So it's always good to have a plan B, a second plan, a third plan. So if things don't go according to plan, it can be really annoying for INTJs. Question number 3, is there an objective moral truth, or is morality subjective? So here the INTJ says, yes, I have a very well set of moral codes for myself. I firmly believe that decisions and plans I make are based on these moral principles. It includes never stealing anyone's belongings, money, and so on. So moral codes are very important. So this is interesting because, as I said, this INTJ is 22, so FI may not be fully developed yet, but it does look like it's kind of surfacing here. Because INTJs may not necessarily use their FI very strongly in their early 20s. They'll be very focused on what's logical, what's analytical, what can be kind of rationally valued, rather than what is subjective values, supposedly subjective. So if something makes logical sense, then they'll go for it, even if it may not align with their values in the early days. If it's that would kind of, the logical side of it will trump the personal values and personal consequences, or personal circumstances. So they will consider and value those more than someone's personal circumstances. So what can happen is that INTJs may be they may be planning out a task, and the process itself, while it may make logical sense, it may not be popular with people, and it might be a good idea to then relook at the process. Whereas an INTJ in their early years may be like, well, if it makes logical sense, I'm not going to relook at the process. This is how we're doing it, whether you're happy with it or not. So it is good to get that balance of FI as well. So that is good to see that here, that it's happening. Question number 4, do you believe in free will, determinism, or a combination of both? Well, all the things that I have done until now at the age of 22 is purely based on my past life experiences. So what do you think? I even thought that I became an INTJ because of such bitter life experiences, but whether the MBTI is inbuilt or formed is a matter of debate. That is true. It is a matter of debate. MBTI theorists do believe that we are born with our personality types, that they are not developed through time. So whatever traits you have and preferences you have, obviously you're shaped by your environment and so on, and life circumstances, but these preferences you're born with, and whatever happens later in life, it can be hard to distinguish whether this was something you're born with or something that has happened to you and made you act this way. I'm going to do a part 2 because I'm just noticing the time.